Everyone is talking about the protests in Morocco about Jal Sayed, but maybe not in the way you'll hear about it today in this episode. How did these protests start? Who is behind Jal Sayed? Why was the discussion only about the health sector? Why exactly now? Just a few months before the elections, what does President Trump have to do with Jal Sayed? Today, we will reveal the other side of these protests. Stay tuned. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings, and welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing. From the series of opinion episodes that we dedicate to these protests taking place in Morocco, which, as everyone knows, are being led by what is now called the Jil Zib movement. So today, in response to the requests of some dear viewers that came through a number of comments in previous episodes, I will present an analysis of what is happening today in Morocco. Of course, all these demands raised in these protests are legitimate demands. They are demands that remain within the framework of the health sector, education, employment, and bringing down the widespread corruption in these sectors. And in particular, we are talking about the health sector, which is the most important sector that concerns all Moroccans and all the peoples of the world. Yet, we find that it is the worst sector in Morocco, suffering from very serious imbalances, and this is not something new. Today, the signs have appeared strongly and directly. Since Morocco's independence, this problem has existed. So now, we can say that the most difficult sector to reform in Morocco is the health sector. Even when successive governments in Morocco talk about reforms in the health system, you find that they were actually doing the opposite. That means there was neither reform nor anything of the sort. So, we are all concerned with this sector, and we all stand with these popular demands to reform the health system in Morocco. These demands are popular, and we could even say they are basic demands. Because today, in every household in Morocco, there is talk about the disasters happening in this sector, about the scandals in this sector. In every Moroccan home, you find suffering. From this perspective, you find that there is someone from the family, someone from the household. He went through a difficult, bitter, and humiliating experience when he visited one of the hospitals in Morocco. What's strange is that whether it's a public or private hospital, there are always disasters and scandals. Therefore, these are legitimate demands and protests. No one can help but support them in this peaceful context, of course, as long as they stay away from chaos, destructive acts, and so on. But here I will talk about some important points that maybe not everyone has noticed. There are a number of observations and reservations, and there are some very important points. I will talk about them, about what is called today Generation Z, and about these recent exciting events that have happened, which of course all revolved around, or rather started from, the health sector. Why Generation Z? Why is it only this generation that came out with these protests? Even though it's the same generation we see at Mawazin, at Boulevard, and at various festivals, it's the generation that consumes the most nonsense, the generation that's most present on TikTok. So who is really leading these protests? Are there parties pushing this generation toward protesting? How is that? Why did the spark of protest start in the health sector and not in other sectors like employment, for example? Why was the main and most prominent headline about health? Even when we talk about the scandals that the health sector in Morocco is known for, these scandals are not new. Today, every time a scandal comes up, almost every month, there's a specific scandal in this sector. But each time, the scandal is contained and things are calmed down. This file is put into the archives. But why? This time, things gained a lot of momentum, took on a big media dimension and a huge public dimension. This made the Minister of Health take action, visit hospitals, and without prior arrangement be received by citizens with complaints. And this in front of whom? In front of the camera lenses, as if it were a play. Even during the protests, we saw how the arrests happened right in front of the cameras. For the first time, we can say since the RIF movement, it's the first time that everyone is allowed to film the security interventions and arrests, even the citizens. I'm not just talking about journalists, I mean everyone without exception. Why exactly now? This is happening just a few months before the legislative elections. So to answer all these questions, everyone should first know that these olive oil protests didn't just happen in Morocco. Recently they happened in Morocco, in Nepal, in Madagascar, in Peru, in Poland, and in other countries as well. And maybe they will spread to other countries, maybe France, maybe Britain. But the strange irony is that all these countries have something in common. One, and that they have governments connected to Macron, Starmer and Scholz, connected to the rulers of France, Germany, Britain and so on. We find that all these governments have a liberal or neoliberal orientation, governments supported by global liberalism, meaning by those countries that lead the West, lead Europe, France, Britain and so on. While, of course, as everyone knows, Trump now, since he rose to the head of the American administration, has been waging a fierce war, a very big struggle against liberalism. He is fighting a war both internally and externally. Trump's political opponents, when we talk about them now, have become well known, known to everyone, and people talk about them openly. Who are they? They are the liberals, whether internally or externally. Recently, Trump has taken very big steps against all the liberal remnants. For example, against homosexuals in America, he stopped government support for this group. He started a wide-scale purge of the army and government institutions. Now, even more than that, he has involved the army, the American army, in this mission. He gave them the task of purging the American states from this phenomenon that, of course, was eating away at American society and reaching deep into these government and security institutions and so on. The same thing as well. Externally, Trump entered fierce conflicts against liberal governments around the world. Today, he is against most European governments, against Macron, against Starmer, against Scholz. And he openly supports right-wing parties in these countries, the conservative parties. What matters to him is that these governments are no longer liberal. The generation of oil protests, a paradox, arose in countries with Western-backed governments, but not in other regimes. This gives a realistic impression that there is a subtle direction for these protests, just to bring down the Akhnouch government. So here, everyone should pay attention that this subtle direction doesn't mean that the youth aren't suffering or don't have real reasons. No, that's not it. That's not what I mean. What I mean here is that there are those who are taking advantage of this real anger and this real situation to direct these protests, exaggerate events, and play with the algorithms. Using international hashtags that suggest what happened in Nepal might happen again in Morocco or might spread to other countries there. There are many mechanisms used for subtle guidance. So those who really understand the game might take advantage of this situation to benefit from these disturbances, from this new shift in international direction. For example, some other non-liberal parties appear and try to ride this wave to present themselves as significant. They present themselves as the alternative, the better alternative, the ones who will carry out reforms, the ones who will respond to these demands, the demands of the people. So there are those who made statements supporting the protest. There are those who made statements supporting the Gilzid movement. There are those who assigned the party's youth to communicate directly with this movement and support its demands and so on. Some even founded a movement as well and so on. There are those who also want to take the lead of Gilzid. So these demands are indeed real, the demands are indeed legitimate, but there is a subtle direction, a direction that mainly aims to bring down the Akhnouch government. And that would mean Akhnouch is finished. Ever since Trump became president of America, it's as if the end date for Akhnouch was set. The decision has been made. The next Moroccan government will be a conservative government, Akhnouch's party. It won't collapse completely, but it will clearly decline. It will lose, in the next elections, it will lose dozens of parliamentary seats. These seats will be distributed among the other parties. The Authenticity and Modernity Party will also decline. This party is finished. Now we will witness the return of the historical parties. The Justice and Development Party will come back again, but not with the same strength it once had. It might just win a few more seats. The next Prime Minister might be from the Istiklal Party or maybe a technocrat, but what's important is that he will have a conservative face. The important thing is that change is definitely coming and Akhnouch's era is over there. This means there are clear indications that the Gilet's protests were actually directed and exaggerated to undermine liberal governments. Trump is no longer America's president. The world will change. The world is changing now. There is a new international direction in place for everyone now. All the liberal programs now are on hold. Why? Because there is also a new global direction. There is a very important point that everyone should pay attention to, and it should be pointed out as well. This point is, why did these protests spark? It started in the health sector. Why is that? This didn't happen by coincidence at all. This was not a coincidence as some might think. Maybe it means everything here is planned and intentional, and it's exactly related to what? With the 2030 World Cup, I'll explain to you exactly. Morocco is now committed as part of the requirements for hosting the 2030 World Cup to improving services, infrastructure, and so on. And the most important sector committed to this from the requirements. This is the healthcare sector that needs to meet certain international standards to ensure the health security of the fans. The International Federation of Association Football, known as International Federation of Association Football, as everyone knows. It requires the countries that will host the World Cup to provide a strong medical system capable of dealing with millions of people, whether residents or visitors, and so on. The terms of reference. This ensures that hospitals are equipped, the number of hospitals. It ensures the required number of doctors and healthcare staff according to the population, the number of visitors, and it ensures there are enough ambulances and so on. The entire healthcare system must be a world-class system that keeps up with this event, just like what is done in all European countries. So, for Morocco to reach this level, there should be clear projects that have already started today. Just as world-class stadiums were built in just a few months, hospitals should have also been built and equipped during the same period. Today, how is it possible? For example, just to name a few, how is it possible? The regional specialized hospital in Tétouan has not opened to this day, even though 5 years or more have passed since the beginning. 5 years of construction work. How is it possible that there was a hospital for respiratory diseases in the Benkarsh area? The Tétouan house is being rebuilt again, but it hasn't opened until today, even though it's been over 7 or 8 years since construction began. And it's a small hospital. We're talking about 7 or 8 years, while we've seen football stadiums being built in just a few months and with huge budgets. So here, if everyone remembers the last royal speech by King Mohammed VI, what did he say? He said there is no place today or tomorrow for a Morocco moving at 2 speeds. He talked about how development should include all citizens without discrimination or exclusion. So here it means that Morocco cannot move at the speed of a rabbit in the sports sector, while the health sector, which affects all citizens without exception, moves at the speed of a turtle. He said back then that this is no longer acceptable at all, neither today nor tomorrow. So now it's time to reform the health sector. Upcoming workshops will help reform Morocco's health system. According to this program, according to the plan, because there is a signed agreement for the future, there is a set of requirements, there is Morocco's image on the international level, and now this stage is just being prepared. Notice carefully even the slogans that were raised in these protests, and how even other countries reacted to the same topic. Where is the money for football? What about healthcare, hospitals before stadiums, and so on? So, the timing of raising this issue and the start of the protest was very calculated, just before the elections, before Morocco entered the decisive moment to commit to International Federation of Association Football's requirements. Morocco needs funding today, not tomorrow. It needs financial support from friends to develop the healthcare sector so it can keep up with the upcoming event, the World Cup. So the timing was really important. It serves all the goals, both internal and external, and the real goal, so that no one thinks it's about something else. The real goal is not to bring down the government now before the elections, not at all. The goal is to weaken this government, to weaken the ruling party, to put pressure on it, and to highlight its failures and expose them to public opinion before the elections. Even today, although the Istiqlal Party is part of this government, it is far from all this noise. I mean, in the media, the spotlight is only on two parties from this government, the National Rally of Independence and the Authenticity and Modernity Party, the two parties that are connected to the global liberal system. I mean, these parties are basically finished. So in the end, things might seem clear to everyone, but in reality they are not. Maybe those who are protesting in the streets today have no idea at all that they are actually part of this game. Why? Because they really are genuine demands, as I said, and they really are legitimate demands, as I said, but there is subtle guidance. There are no protests without leadership. So here, everyone needs to pay attention. In conclusion, we pray for this country's safety and success. Please subscribe and like.